This is Six Music.
BBC Radio 6 Music documentaries, telling the stories in music that matter.
It's what we do.
It's the beauty of Six Music.
Find out more at the 6 Music website. Now, 6 Music documentaries present The Wicked Pickett, the life and times of Wilson Pickett.
I'm gonna sing a song right now.
Go ahead, son.
Montague.
Yes, sir.
You told the soul sisters.
I tried to talk to them.
You told the soul brothers.
I tried to talk to them.
They got to wait.
They got to wait.
They got to wait.
In the heart, they got to wait.
Way over.
Yes, sir.
In the midnight hour.
Let me hear you say it again.
Yeah.
If I can only just let me hear you say it one more time, son. Yeah.
I'm Wilson Pickett. If you care to call me the Wicked Pickett, do so by all means.
I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour. That's when my love comes tumbling down. I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour. That's when my love tumbling down.
When he was singing, you could see the veins in his neck popping out. The veins in his head were popping out. It was like a tight clock spring. Any minute he was liable to break and fly off into space.
Anybody that was willing to listen, he would let them know that someday he was going to be famous.
Wilson was a very intense man. There wasn't a whole lot of mellow.
He was a wild man.
Even if he sang Mary Had a Little Lamb, he was going to put the Pickett stamp of the champ on it.
When the midnight hour came on, it was ruckus.
Wilson Pickett, when he came off stage, he was wringing wet. He was soaking wet all the way down to his drawers.
One night we was in a club. This lady pulled off her panties and threw them on the stage with her. Didn't bother me, because I knew I was going home with him.
He said, man, don't tell me what to do. I'm the Wicked Pickett, and this is what I do. I be screaming.
He just was so wow. I said, damn, he is the Wicked Pickett.
Wilson Pickett. Wilson Pickett. Come on, take a bow. Watch me. All right, that was the show for you.
Yes, indeed, soul superstar Wilson Pickett. Famous for his hits like Mustang Sally, In the Midnight Hour and Land of a Thousand Dances. In the 64 years that he had on this earth, his life was one of extremes, with fame, fortune, drugs, guns and a legacy of soul music. He would influence generations on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Roger Daltrey, and this is the story of Wilson Pickett, the Wicked Pickett. Being a member of The Who, we developed our wild side over a period of years. But for Wilson Pickett, his younger brother Max remembers the wicked side being there very early on.
Well, Wilson was the problem kid of our family. Wilson was a very intense person. Every day, without exception, going to school, Wilson would fight somebody, and coming back home, he would fight somebody. And the bus driver would put him off, and he would have to walk all the way home if he didn't get picked up by somebody on the way.
The Spiritual Five, featuring a young Wilson Pickett. The singer was born in Alabama on the 18th of March 1941. In what was then a tiny village surrounded by cotton fields called Prattville. He was one of 11 children and his grandfather was a preacher, so it was no surprise to brother Max that Wilson was first drawn into gospel music.
He was always singing something. Whenever he would be doing chores as a young kid, whenever he was going to the fields to share crop, he would sing, and he was singing in church. That was right around 12, 13 years old. And Wilson knew that he had something very special.
As a teenager, Wilson was proving difficult to control, so he was sent up north to join his father, That's where he got his first professional start. Here's Wilson to explain.
Back in Detroit, Michigan, a long time ago, I used to be with a group called the Volunteers. They were the gospel group, very popular gospel group, and I was discovered, as you know, by one of the Falcons, the bass singer, Willie Schofield.
I just left my doctor's office and I was getting into my car, and I heard this voice singing. The voice was just exceptional. I've never heard anything so crystal clear and the notes so pure that he was hitting. So when he finished, I walked up the stairs and I introduced myself. I said, I'm a member of the Falcons, and I'd like for you to come and audition.
When I went to that rehearsal, they was pretty excited over what I did, my voice and everything.
I need your good loving, baby. I need you to
Every door in the building opened. Who is this singing like this? And I introduced him. I said, this is Wilson Pickett. We can use him. They didn't want to do that. Matter of fact, they approached Marvin Gaye, asked him what he considered being lead singer with the Falcons. He graciously said no. They shook their heads, and one by one they decided, okay, we'll use him temporary.
I need you to what you say, boy. I believe you can say it a little bit louder. When you say it like that, you make me feel all right. You know I need you.
Having joined Willie Schofield and the rest of the Falcons in 1960, it was soon time to take the new lineup out on the road. So Mac Rice remembers the debut gig featuring new recruit Wilson Pickett.
That was his first time on stage with the group. So when we started the song, or when Lance hit the intro, Pickett just froze, you know. And I kind of slid over to him. I said, man, this your intro, this your intro. But when he got opened up, that was it, man. That was the Wilson Pickett show from then on.
I Found the Love, co-written by Wilson Pickett, was their first single to feature him on lead vocals. It took the Falcons into the top 10 of the R&B charts in February 1962. But despite the success, it was not all glamour for the new recruit.
I went on the road with them, and you wouldn't believe we used to put wagons together with the sugarcane wagons, and we'd get up on there, and the wagon is rocking, and I remember one time, the thing split apart, we all went down in the middle, right down through the wagon thing, you know. Those were the good old days.
I Found the Love gave Wilson Pickett his first taste of chart success. But despite his contribution, he never became a full-time member of the Falcons. He had ambitions for a solo career instead. This led to the release of a couple of modestly successful singles on independent labels, which was barely enough to keep him, his new wife Bonnie Covington, and their 2 children. The marriage didn't last. Dovie Hall was Wilson's next long-term partner.
When I first met him, he didn't have anything. It was winter time and it was snow on the ground. And Wilson didn't have a coat. He had shoes on with holes in the bottom. And I went and I bought Wilson a leather coat, bought him shoes, and that's when he told me, he said, Dovie, I'm gonna make it and I'm gonna help you. And he did. He was very nice to me after that.
Wilson's big opportunity as a solo artist came in the shape of his own composition, If You Need Me. In 1963, he and his manager approached Atlantic Records for a deal on the strength of this track. But Atlantic had other ideas and bought the song for Solomon Burke and passed on the opportunity of signing Wilson.
I cried coming down the elevator. We walk, we talk, we ask. We come across Lloyd Price, Hello, Double L label. Now, they try to be wise guys anyway, right? Solomon Burke, they went in the studio and cut a track on him overnight. Lloyd Price and them put my record out at the same time.
If you need me, call me. If you need me, call me.
So me and Solomon Burke has the same record. If you need me, call me. Only I got Magnificent Montague saying, burn, baby, burn. Now he's playing the shit out of my record every 2 minutes on the radio, right? Atlantic has got the whole distribution thing. Magnificent Montague is responsible for my record being a hit. If you need me, call me. Solomon Burke and I had the same record at the same time. And we decided we'd team up. We went on the road and everything. We sang it together and all that. We had a lot of fun.
Don't wait too long. Just pick up your phone and I'll be home where I belong.
Max Pickett.
Jerry Wexler would send Solomon Burke out to promote his record. He would go out and he would tell the people, you need to listen to that Wilson Pickett version of this, because he knew that Wilson had been done wrong and he didn't like it. And so not only did Solomon Burke make Jerry Wexler and them aware that they had did him wrong and it wasn't right, but Solomon Burke, because he had a lot of pull with Atlantic back then, because he was one of their #1 stars, and when you're the #1 star, you got a lot of pull, and they will listen at you. He recommended to them that they sign Wilson, and later on they did sign Wilson.
I still love you, always think of you. I still love you, always think of you. No matter what the people say, I won't stay away. And if you need me, I'll be home where I belong.
So, with Wilson's version of If You Need Me riding high in the R&B charts, a successful solo career was within Wilson's grasp. There was just one thing he had to sort out, though. He was still very much part of the Falcons. Here's Eddie Floyd.
Well, we know if you got a hit record, is it going to stay with the group or not? Well, our next show is going to be Washington, D.C. again, and we pull up in front of Wilson's house in Detroit, and there is a red Cadillac sitting just in front of our car. We pull behind it. Pickett's coming out with his clothes, and we think he's walking to our car. He turns right. Where you going? I got a record hop that I'm supposed to do in Chicago. And that was the end of the Falcons right there. We decided, nobody else could sing that song, not like Pickett was singing the song. So we broke up.
All my life I've searched for a love that's true. At last I think I found it in you. Now that my skies are no longer gray, there's just a little something I'd like to say. I'm gonna love you in the morning, love you in the evening too. I'm gonna love you from the rain or shine. I'm gonna love you because you're mine, all mine. I'm gonna love you, love you, love you, love you, love you, all the time. Yeah.
Wilson was now on the verge of signing to Atlantic Records, but he was still under contract to the independent label Double L. Studio owner Rick Hall, who was later to work on some of Wilson's biggest hits at Fame Studios in Alabama, recalls the unorthodox way he dealt with this.
He had shot his way out of his last recording contract before he came to Atlantic Records. And I asked him, I said, Pickett, how'd that happen? And he said, well, it was simple. I just got on an elevator and went up to the 20th floor where the boss was. I walked up behind him and put my arm around his neck and took a .45 pistol and stuck it in his ear and told him that I came to get my contract. He quite willingly gave me my contract back.
Wilson's first two Atlantic releases bombed, At this time, Otis Redding was enjoying success with recordings made at Stack Studios, so Pickett was swiftly dispatched to Memphis.
I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour. That's when my love comes tumbling down. I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour when there's no one else around.
In the Midnight Hour will become Wilson Pickett's signature tune and his biggest hit in the UK. Guitarist Steve Cropper, who wrote the song, was told of Wilson's arrival.
I'd never heard of Wilson Pickett, but we worked in a record shop, so we started researching it a little bit. I found a gospel record, but I remember him singing on it. I went, oh, wow, this guy's really got a great voice. And then the end of the record, in the fade out, he says, oh, I'm going to sing about Jesus in the midnight hour. Whoa, sing about Jesus in the midnight hour. And then he'd scream, and da-da-da-da. I said, man, that's that guy's signature.
I would always put that somewhere in the song, in the midnight hour, in the gospel song. I may meet Jesus. It may be soon in the morning, or it may be in the midnight hour. You see, so that midnight hour thing was kicking around all the time.
Trumpeter Wayne Jackson.
He was right in the middle of us, and he had us all dancing, and it was such a hot track that we were all just having a big time. We were like a bunch of kids with a banana pudding. We couldn't get enough.
Back in those days, it was a disc jockey by the name of Mr. Lee, and he would play that song, and play that song. And whenever we would hear it, we would stop what we was doing, and we would listen at every second of it. We got a brother now that's being played on the radio, and it was like, here we are, this country family living in the South, and now we got a famous brother, and it was a big deal. It was humongous.
You're listening to The Wicked Pickett, the story of Wilson Pickett. Despite the success of In the Midnight Hour as a single, his debut LP of the same name did not exactly set the charts alight. So now the pressure was on Wilson to release a hit album. His next LP, the exciting Wilson Pickett, released in August 1966, achieved that goal, reaching number 21 in the US album charts, and it delivered 3 hit singles. Here's Eddie Floyd, followed by Steve Cropper.
Steve and I wrote a song called 6345789 because Wilson Pickett was coming in town.
Eddie told me, he said, I've got a great idea. He said, I want to write a song with my girlfriend's phone number. I wrote it down as a pretty odd number. And I sat in a corner, facing the corner of the room, and I sat there and did combinations of numbers until I could get them to do up, down, 6, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9.
And I'll come up with, if you need a little loving, call on me.
If you need a little loving, call on me. All right. And if you want a little hugging, call on me, baby. I'll be right here at home. All you got to do is pick up your telephone and dial now. 6345789. What's my number? 6345789.
And we couldn't wait to play him the songs. I put the tape up. Eddie handed Wilson the lyrics to the song. And so the tape starts playing, and Wilson's looking at it, and listening to the song, and looking at it, and all of a sudden he wads it up and throws it on the floor. And about that time, Eddie Floyd hits him with a flying tackle. And the two of them are down on the control room floor wrestling around, and I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to get killed. You know, this is my death day. And they wrestled around a little bit, and I thought Wilson hated the song. He did that just to tick Eddie off. He said they used to do that when they were on the road together. They was always pulling pranks on each other and all this sort of stuff. He actually loved the song.
I hope
Of all of the artists that we recorded at Stax, I do not remember any of them ever paying a whole lot of attention to the band or doing anything for the band. And he tipped all the musicians on that session. It was a nice tip in those days. $100 go a long way. He made sure all the guys in the band, Duck and everybody, that got $100. We're not making that much for the session.
Eventually, Stax Studios became frustrated with the lack of credit that Atlantic Records gave them, and the relationship came to an end. This left Jerry Wexler looking for an alternative studio to record his new hitmaker. The choice was to send him down to Alabama in the Deep South, which stirred up some unhappy memories, his brother Max explains.
He used to often talk about the times when they first started out with the Falcons, whenever they would be touring throughout the South. They mostly slept in the car, because they were not allowed to check in the hotels. There were certain restaurants that they only could get takeout. They was not allowed to come in and sit down to eat. There was times when they would be pulled over by the state troopers, and the state troopers would make them all get out of the car, and then they would ask them, where you boys going, and they would tell them, say, we're members of the Falcons group, we're a singing group, blah, blah, and they would actually make them sing something just to prove that they were singers. And here they are standing on the side of the road by their car singing for the state troopers. It made him furious. Wilson was always an aggressive, highly competitive person, and he did not like anybody telling him what to do or pushing him around. That type of thing just hurt him to the core and made him extremely angry. There was a time when Wilson just did not want to have nothing to do with the South because of things like that.
But back to the Deep South he had to go for his next session, which was at Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals. Once again, Pickett had to start afresh with new musicians and a new producer, Rick Hall, who met him at the airport.
He was quite intimidating. I was this long, tall cracker from Alabama driving this old beat-up Chrysler car, so he wondered about me. And so I said to him, hey, Wilson, I'm Rick Hall, and we're going to cut some funky hit records together. Well, I could see the blood all drain out of his face because he thought, my God, what have I got myself into here? What's Wexler sent me down here with these people?
I'm so glad to be here tonight. I'm glad to be in your wonderful city. And I got a little message for you that a friend of mine's told me a few months back. I'm talking about Brother Solomon Bird. Y'all know him, don't you? These are the words he told me, Chiro.
Roger Hawkins was the resident drummer at Fame Studios.
He came in, one of those guys was just full of confidence. Straight as an arrow, standing straight as an arrow, muscular, young. One of those guys you didn't want to get on the wrong side of.
It was important for everyone involved to get a hit from this session at Fame Studios, and no one expected that it would be the first song presented to them, least of all producer Rick Hall.
Land of a Thousand Dances came by the way of Jerry Wexler, and we all wondered, what in the hell can we do with this song? I mean, you know, when you look at the lyrics on it, it's like, na 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 na. You know, what is that? Well, we thought we were sunk until Ship's Moment came up with a guitar lick that turned the whole thing around. Pickett said, well, I got the intro, and I said, what is it? He said, well, why don't I sing the intro? I never heard of such a thing before. Who ever heard of a singing intro? He said, well, it's like this.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
And then the bass kicks in.
All right.
say it one time.
The piano player was Spooner Oldham.
There was a moment on Land of a Thousand Dances when I'm playing the piano and Wilson's standing in the middle of the room with an overhead microphone, and he's stomping, you know, and there was like a dust bowl around him. I could barely see him. He had created this cosmic-looking globe around him.
You know I feel all right. Feel pretty good, y'all. Nah, 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 nah. Come on, y'all. Let's say it one more time.
I called everybody into the control room and said, guys, this is a smash, man.
By the mid-1960s, Wilson had achieved his goal of becoming a star. Although he was now enjoying the high life, he never forgot his roots or family. His brother Max explains.
Wilson was a very generous person to the family. When we still lived in Alabama and he became famous, he would constantly send our mom money to look after us. When we migrated from Alabama to Louisville, he bought her the one home, and then later on he bought her a nicer home. Whenever mom picked up the phone and called, she got a need, it was always met. He was very generous.
But the wild side he displayed as a youngster was never far away. Another soul act, riding high at the time, were his friends, the Isley Brothers. And on a trip together, an argument broke out. Here's Max again.
Rudolph, the big brother, didn't take too kindly to Wilson talking to them the way he was talking to them. So him and Wilson had some words. And so Wilson invited Rudolph outside in the snow to settle it. And Rudolph, because he was such a big, strong guy, he got the best of Wilson. And so Wilson didn't take too kindly to being best. So he went back into his hotel room and he got a 2-shot Derringer. And so he took the Derringer and blew the doorknob off the door and kicked it open. When he got inside, all of the Isley Brothers had ran to different rooms and was hiding in closets, and he felt like that was funny. So he busted out and just started laughing, standing there in the middle of the floor. And he was laughing. And he told them all to come on back out. He said, man, I wasn't going to shoot nobody, you know. He talked about that a lot because it tickled him for the rest of his life.
Born to be wild. Born to be wild.
Wilson was now to get a nickname to go with his reputation. Here's the Wicked Pickett himself.
Noreen Woods from Atlantic Records. She called me that one day because back in that time, the secretaries were wearing these miniskirts. One of the girls was leaning over the desk on a clear day. You can see the San Francisco Bay. So I went and pitched her. Right? Noreen saw it. She said, my, you are so wicked. Jerry Wexler ran out of his office. That's it, baby. That's it. That's the name of his next album, The Wicked Pickett. That's it. Put it down. And ever since then, I was branded with that name.
Born to be wild. We were born to be wild.
One of Wilson's biggest hits came from the pen of his old colleague and former Falcon, Sir Mac Rice.
I wrote a song called Mustang Sally back in the day, you know. I feel that if Pickett had not cut that song, it wouldn't have been that hot. Pickett was big then and Pickett was singing good, you know. And they were cutting some good old funky tracks down there in Muscle Shoals, Alabama.
Mustang Sally. Guess you better slow your Mustang down. Oh, Lord. What I said now. Mustang Sally now, baby. Oh, Lord. Guess you better slow your Mustang down.
recording session nearly ended in disaster. Here's studio boss Rick Hall, pianist Spooner Oldham, and finally drummer Roger Hawkins to take up the story.
We were listening back to it, rejoicing over the day's work. The control room was full of people, musicians, horn players, friends of friends, and somebody accidentally sat down on the tape recorder. When they did, they mashed the fast forward button, which is about 3,000 RPMs.
The metal spool that fits on top of the tape to hold it to the spinner flew off, and the tape erupted into the air, little quarter-inch pieces, half-inch pieces, probably 30, 40 pieces of tape all over the room. And Wilson sort of fussing, "You ruined my master."
And Jerry Webster says, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And Tommy Dowd, the engineer, says, "Jerry, it's okay. Don't worry about a thing. It's fine." And everybody just looked at each other like, this can't be, you know. And Jerry's, "Okay, if you're telling me not to worry, I'm not going to worry." So Tom Dowd found every sliver of the tape. Some of the slivers were so small it was inside the tape machine. Little bits and teeny, I mean, everywhere. But he found every one of them and spliced them back together. Amazement.
Got to put your flat feet on the ground. When I said now, let me say it one more time, y'all. Now all you wanna do is ride around
Do you know Wilson Pickett, Joey?
I jammed with the man many moons ago.
He'll be all right for backstage passes, then he's coming to Dublin. Look, Pickett adds Ireland to European slate.
Who's Wilson Pickett?
Mustang Sally was the key song in the 1991 movie about a young Dublin soul band called The Commitments.
Mustang Sally. Guess you better slow that Mustang down.
The Commitments movie came at a welcome time for Wilson, boosting his reputation as a soul icon. Although alluded to, he didn't actually appear in the film, much to the surprise of his brother Max.
Wilson, Dovie, myself, we drove to Manhattan to see the Commitment movie. I thought Wilson was actually appearing in the movie. And so we watched the whole movie, and then on the way back home, I said, "I didn't see you in the movie." And he said, "Yeah, I was never supposed to appear in the movie." What happened was that when this movie was being developed and being produced, Wilson was unaware that it was going to take place. He only became aware of it later on at a later date. Even permission to use him as an off-camera entity in the movie, he didn't have an opportunity to give his permission up front.
They did it already, right? Without my permission, right? So so they turned around and they did some good things for me. They came over here. I went with them on their premieres and they paid me good. Los Angeles, Chicago. They're very nice kids. I enjoyed singing with them on stage. And one of these times I did get in the back of the limousine for real. But in the movie, there wasn't nobody in the back of that car. No. They lied like a chicken, man, you know.
I'm gonna be wiping those weeping eyes.
You're listening to The Wicked Pickett, the story of Wilson Pickett, with me, Roger Daltrey. Although Wilson Pickett was a larger-than-life character in public, those close to him, like producer Rick Hall and his long-term partner Dovie, saw a different side.
Well, he didn't let too many people get too close with him. I really think he had an issue with trusting.
I don't think he had an enormous amount of close friends that he relied on. But the friends that he did have, he was very loyal to and cared for very much and would go to battle for him in a minute. He was very close, I thought, to Bobby Womack because every time we'd cut a session, he'd call Bobby Womack and Bobby would fly in to help him with the session.
One Bobby Womack penned hit for Wilson was I'm a Midnight Mover in 1968.
I'm a midnight mover. Look at it. All night groove. I'm a midnight teaser. Real soul pleaser.
Pickett was sorely in need of new songs for his own 1968 album and reached out to Bobby Womack for help. Here Bobby remembers being left with no material for his own debut studio album.
I was supposed to go down there and sing and play these songs for me and record them. Pickett was there with no ideas. What you got in that bag? I said, songs. I said, I got full of them, I'm fresh. So they were saying, why don't you pull out something and let me sing?
Sweet soul talker, I'm a midnight creeper, all day sleeper, I'm a midnight rover.
He could beat me singing them, and that song is true. Could never get the thing that he had on those songs.
Leave your love light shining bright. Make me know that
One day, he said, Bob, where you get your energy? You don't never go to sleep. I said, you really want to know? And I let him have a tube of Coke. Man, so when I look, he was dancing like James Brown all over the place. Oh, this shit is good. So I always felt guilty. I said, tell me. I said, made Pickett worse.
That introduction to cocaine by Bobby Womack would play a darker role in Pickett's life later on. But his next introduction was on a more positive note. A young rock guitarist, Duane Allman, with unconventional ideas, would provide Wilson with his biggest hit of 1969. He had been hired for this session by Fame Studios' Rick Hall.
Duane came in and said, why don't we record Hey Jude? I said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life. And Pickett agreed. But as time went by, he wore me and Pickett out and said, let me just play along with the lick I've got in mind. And he started playing it. And Pickett started kind of singing along and humming it and this and that and the other and said, well, let's try it. So we did. And, of course, the results are on the record. Instead of Hey Jude, he thought the lyrics were Hey Jude.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad.
We didn't recognize him saying that. I said, are you saying Hey Jude or are you saying Hey Jude? He said, I'm saying Hey Jude. Isn't that what it is? And I said, no, it's Hey Jude. And he said, well, I didn't know that. But, of course, there was no changing it. So it came out. It was an error.
Hey Jude, don't be afraid. You were made to go out and get her. The minute you let her under your skin, then you'll begin to make it better.
When in the UK, Wilson attracted some celebrity fans to his gigs, including members of the Beatles, as Max recalls.
Ringo put the question to Wilson and said, Wilson, we go all over the world singing, and everywhere we go, we hear this thing, people talking about soul. Say, what is soul? Ringo, he says, soul ain't nothing but a feeling. He says, and then Ringo asked him, how do you know when you got it? He says, the way you know, it gets in your hand and makes you want to clap your hand. It gets in your feet and makes you want to move your feet.
Hey Jude, don't let me down. You found her, now go on out and get her. But remember to let her in your heart. Then you can start to make it better.
It was clear to Wilson that many of the musicians of the 60s British invasion owed a significant debt to the American R&B pioneers. He will discuss with brother Max his disquiet about the new competition.
There was a time in his life when he spoke out. He felt like a great injustice was being paid to the original architects of R&B. The main one was the Rolling Stones. He really had a problem early on with Tom Jones. So when they came here, it was almost like they was received as if they was the original creators of that style or whatever. And the competitive spirit would rise up in them, and they would lash out against each other every now and then. But later on, Wilson became a close friend of the Stones. He became a personal close friend with Tom Jones. He went over there and played his show.
In 1970, Wilson was back in the American charts with his version of the Archie's Sugar Sugar. The following year, Atlantic were impressed with the sound that was coming out of Gamble and Huff's Philly studio and booked Wilson for a piece of the action. Earl Young played drums on the hit Engine Number 9.
Now this was a different kind of song for him, not only him, but it was a different kind of song that we had never used this groove before in anything. It didn't really have a set tempo. It was like do-do-doo, 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 and I was playing and hitting on everything, a tom-tom here, a cymbal, do-do-doo, 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 and till we got into that part, that engine, then the groove started.
Wilson had a reputation of being very focused in the studio and revelled in capturing that live feel, as guitarist Bobby Eli and drummer Earl Young found out.
In the studio, Pickett loved to record live with the band playing at the same time. In fact, on Engine Number 9, we set him up behind the baffle, right beside the control room.
And he started stomping his feet, you know, and said, look, I want you to put it right here. He said, put it right here. And look, you had to be able to hit it. He dealt on soul. When I say soul, that means if you were playing and he didn't feel it, he wouldn't be satisfied.
And that was all done in one take. Engine Number 9 was his favorite song on the album.
Been so long since I held up. Been so long since I given up.
There were times when Pickett's wild side could land him in hot water. On one occasion, the result was much more than he bargained for. His brother Max and Bobby Womack.
One of the members of his organization had something smart to say. And Wilson got up from the bar, and Wilson literally attacked him and got the best of him. The guy went on and took the towel rack in the hotel, and he tore the rod off the wall. And he went back and got on the elevator and came back downstairs.
They said, look how Pickett, he turned around. It went straight in his eye, up the back of his head. The guy was saying, I got you now, I got you now. Yeah, you deserve it, man.
A piece of metal got embedded in his eye. According to him, he lost about 50% of the sight in that particular eye. And after that time, he began to wear sunglasses a lot.
I can take a tear and make it disappear with the wave of my hand. And if your heart is broken apart, I can put it together again. And if you're sick with the misery, you can always count on me, Mr. Magic, Magic.
In 1973, Pickett left the label which had been his home for almost 10 years, Atlantic Records. After this, he never really settled at any one label. His next album was Mr. Magic Man on RCA. Here's Bobby Eli and Rick Hall with an insight into what was happening behind the scenes.
I think the reason that Wilson bopped around to different labels from time to time is the fact that, you know, his personality got in the way.
Atlantic was afraid of him, and Wexler was afraid of him, and he told me, don't bring him around Atlantic Records because he's a tremendous talent and I love him, but my people are afraid of him. Don't bring him around over there.
Magic Man. Ooh, I understand. Oh, I understand.
The album that we did back in Philadelphia called Mr. Magic Man, you know, it should have been a much bigger record. What happened at the time, RCA was not capable of properly promoting black artists. They were big with white artists like Elvis and the like, but when it came to black artists and R&B, they didn't have anybody that worked there that knew how to promote it properly. So, you know, Pickett got lost in the shuffle, sadly.
Wilson bought himself out of the doomed RCA deal after 5 poor-selling albums. He moved to EMI in the late 70s, where he fared even worse. Guitarist Bobby Eli remembers the effect that this lack of success had on Wilson when he got him back in the studio for a one-off disco project in 1982 with singer Jackie Moore.
Went up to the studio the first night, and they were both blitzed, man. There was cocaine on the producer's board, there was Cavassier and scotch and everything, and they were all fired up before I even got there, you know. But they did a great job, and Pickett was screaming and screaming. I told him to stop screaming, and he says, "Man, this is what I do. I'm the Wicked Pickett." And he was heavily into his schizophrenic bag, so, you know, every half hour his personality changed. You know, 1 minute I was his main man, the next minute I was taking all his money, and then the next minute I was his main man again. So I got through it, and it was great, and the rest is a mystery.
By the 90s, even Wilson's gigs were drying up. Brother Max and producer John Tiven give us an insight into his state of mind at this time.
This was a period where he hit the bottom, and during that time there was a lot of heavy drinking. That was dibbling and dabbling with cocaine.
He went into a deep funk when the gigs started to dry up. And it was very sad because he had an overwhelming depression that would rise up basically when he wasn't playing. He lived to perform, and when he was performing, he was just top of the world. But when he was off stage, when he was sitting at home where he could enjoy some time off, he wasn't enjoying his time off. He was just waiting for the next gig.
While he was waiting for his next gigs, he was keeping the local law courts busy. He found himself up on charges for drugs, firearms possession, and threatening behaviour to the local mayor. In 1993, he received a 1-year prison sentence for knocking down an 86-year-old pedestrian while under the influence of alcohol.
Drive too fast, you know your ass is gonna be laying in the Sweetwater jail. Laying down in the Sweetwater jail.
By the end of the millennium, Wilson Pickett's personal life was more under control. Professionally, things were about to look up. Songwriter and producer John Tiven was asked to send Wilson a rough mix of an album he was working on with former Falcons member Sir Mac Rice. A couple of days later, his phone rang.
This is Wilson Pickett. I got the record you made with Mac Rice, and it's right up my alley, and I think that you should produce me.
This relationship with John Tiven rejuvenated the singer, and they recorded what was to be his last album, It's Harder Now.
It used to be easy to mess up my mind, but it's harder now. It used to be easy to take up my time, but it's harder now.
The impression I had of Wilson that he was not mellowed at all. But what I sensed from him was that he had in the past embarked on some recordings with people who weren't really well tuned to what he was about, and he found it very frustrating.
Now rhythm and blues is being done a more sophisticated way now with a lot of electronics. Like you take one keyboard guy, he's doing most of the session, you know. Sure enough, in some of my later albums that I did after I left Atlantic Records, I did have a problem with that, you know. So I was saying to the producer as well, no, you got to learn Wilson Pickett. You won't be able to record a Wilson Pickett like that. And I'm not the type of guy that can run in and slap your voice on the track and say, hey, no, somewhere down the line, I'm going to get tripped up there, you know. I had a little bit of a problem with that.
And it's harder now. You can do more hurt with an unkind word than you can with a gun. Many a slip between the tongue and the lip, but this time the damage is done.
Producer John Tiven again.
Wilson, you know, aside from all the, you know, the braggadocio that he carried with him, was a sweet, shy guy. And to get him to really expose the vulnerable side of himself, which he does on the title song on the record, It's Harder Now, I thought was pushing the boundaries. You never had to get him to be an aggressive singer because he had that in the palm of his hand, and you didn't have to really do much to let the wild Wilson out of the bag, but to get a real sweet romantic song out of him was sometimes a little challenging.
But it's harder now. You said it would be easy, but it's not quite the same. Yes, it's harder now.
Max Pickett and Wilson's last agent, Chris Tuthill.
His last album, It's Harder Now, was a breath of fresh air. It was Wilson Pickett. If you had a couple of words to describe how he felt, it was, I'm back.
Wilson was very pleased about the recognition he got for It's Harder Now. I don't think he had any great expectations about rekindling the success he had in the 60s and 70s. He knew that he was always going to be known for the earlier material more than anything else he did, but he was very taken aback by the critical reception that the album received, as well as just the reports he got from fans.
Yes, it's harder now. So much harder now. Yes, it's harder
now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to sing a song right now, the kind of song that I used to sing a long time ago when I first realized that God had given me a talent to be a singer. Still away, still away, still away to Jesus.
Wilson had finally reached some peace in his life, with his wicked wild days put behind him. This was helped by a move, leaving the troubles he had experienced in New Jersey behind. Max Pickett.
When he moved to Virginia, it was kind of like a new beginning for him. Here he is now, he's there. He don't have a woman in his life. He's got these buddies that he go hunting and fishing with, and he was just living a life that he felt like brought him peace and brought him happiness, and he was very content.
Agent Chris Tuthill noticed a big change in Wilson's health in the final years.
Wilson's health issues weren't readily apparent until closer towards the end. He didn't have the stamina to do a longer show. He wouldn't do a song halfway, but he would do less songs if that's all he could do. He did eventually start to become weaker, and that's when he stopped going on the road, and I think not having that in his life also might have led to his early passing.
Wilson Pickett suffered a heart attack and died on the 19th of January 2006. He was aged 64. Max and the whole Pickett family were truly touched by the tributes that came in for their Wilson.
At his main funeral in Louisville, all 3 members of the Falcons was there. They honored Wilson tremendously. Little Richard, he gave a mini sermon. He spoke highly of Wilson, and he felt like Wilson was one of those pioneers, trailblazing entertainers that had left a legacy that would live on forever.
It ain't gonna be no more charity. Somebody say over there. It ain't gonna never be goodbye. See, do it. Do it, do it, do it, do it. Lord have mercy. Look here, see. Let me tell you one thing. I'm gonna tell you this.
I think that young people today need to put some of Wilson Pickett's music back into their records and not be so bland and so vanilla.
Young people who are getting into the business should play those Wilson Pickett records over and over and learn that style.
I think anyone that desires to get down to the primitive base of what music is about is going to have to tip their hat continuously to Wilson Pickett.
I miss his sense of humor. He was a really, really funny guy. All you'd have to do is hang around with him for a day, and he'd say enough funny things to give you the lyrics to an album's worth of songs.
He was an incredibly charming person, and he could carry that onto the stage.
He was one of a kind, with a whole lot of feeling that when he sung, everything that bothered him in life came out, and he touched people.
Thank you very much. You're so wonderful.
The Wicked Pickett. The story of Wilson Pickett was presented by me, Roger Daltrey, and produced by Simon Hodge and Nick Lowe at Demas Production.